Hi and welcome. My name is Tulin and I'm the co-founder of Productivity Neat. In this video, we're going to look at a series of 17 tips, tricks, and keyboard shortcuts, which will allow you to more efficiently modify columns and rows when using Microsoft Excel 2013. So we'll look at things like how to instantly insert rows and columns. Then we'll look at how to delete columns and rows within Microsoft Excel. We'll look at how to hide columns and rows, as well as unhide those individual items. We'll look at grouping columns and rows, and then ungrouping individual items and rows. Lastly, we'll cover the topic of showing the outline symbols for groups within Microsoft Excel with using the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-8. So if any of these topics are interesting to you, go ahead and join us in this video. All right, so if you want to follow along, go ahead and open up the exercise file, Apple Inc. Income Statement 2015. We will be using this file in this individual video. You can find a link to download this file in the description section of this course. All right, so first, if you wanted to, how could you launch the Insert Dialog Box? Now, let's say that we wanted to insert a column here, or maybe a column here. Let's just say we wanted to insert a column here. So we want to insert a total column for the last year, the last 4 quarters for Apple. Now, if we wanted to insert a column here, we could click here, maybe click here, and we could go to Insert, and then it would allow us to select one of these individual items. So maybe we'd go to Insert Column. Now that's pretty great, right? But we can also use a keyboard shortcut of Insert Shift, or rather Control Shift equals. So Control Shift equals or Control Shift plus would launch this individual dialog box here, which would allow us to select either inserting cells in which we would shift the current cells to the right or the cells down. We can also think about inserting an entire row or an entire column. In this case, we'd probably want to do an entire column. So we've inserted our column there. Now, if we wanted to, we could go ahead and call this something like total, and then we could use things like AutoSum with Control, or I think it's actually Alt equals, and automatically create a AutoSum for that. So then we could easily bring it down. So that's kind of a cool trick, right? But what if you then wanted to actually remove a step and insert a column directly? So if you wanted to insert a column directly, rather than come up here and go to Insert Column, you could actually highlight the row. So let's highlight this row. And then you use the same keyboard shortcut, that of Control Shift equals. But because we've highlighted a column, Microsoft Excel knows that we want to insert a column. So it would automatically insert that column there. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. Now, say that we wanted to figure out something like the total revenue, right? So let's go ahead and insert a row here. If you wanted to insert a row, you would select that row there, and then you would go either Insert Row, or you can use that same keyboard shortcut of Control Shift equals. But because we've already highlighted a row, Microsoft Excel knows what we want to insert. So we press Control Shift equals and it inserts a row. Then we could do AutoSum for something like Alt equals, and it would sum these individual values, which fortunately it would, it would Control Z. It would be the same as the value below it. Okay, so now we have maybe some duplicates and we want to think about how to delete individual rows. So if you use the keyboard shortcut Control minus will bring up the delete dialog box. So then you could either delete individual cells, row, or column. Now, just like when we went to insert rows or insert columns, if you wanted to automatically insert, let's say a row, rather than go to Control minus and then pick a row, we would actually select that row here and then use Control minus, and that would automatically delete that row. Because we had selected that row, we tell Microsoft, okay, what do we want to delete? We want to delete a row. We want to delete that selection. That selection is a row, so therefore delete a row. Same would go here. If you want to delete a column, you would select that column and then use the keyboard shortcut Control minus. that would automatically delete that column. So Ctrl- is a great keyboard shortcut that I will often use myself. Now, if you wanted to say delete some individual values, so say we wanted to delete these specific values here, we would highlight those values. Those are cells. So then we press Ctrl- and it would ask us how we want to delete those cells. So let's say shift cells to the left. That would be definitely an option. I'm going to hit Ctrl-Z to undo that because I didn't actually want to make those changes. So we have that set of tips and tricks. Now, if you wanted to delete the contents of the cells, another way to do that would be to select those contents and then press the delete key on your keyboard. Pressing the delete key would also delete those contents and nothing would move over. So that's kind of a cool keyboard shortcut. I guess just a keyboard strategy. Now, what if we want to hide individual columns? So say that we wanted to hide this column because we only wanted to show the four individual quarters or the 4 13-week periods here for Apple. We didn't want to show this fifth one. We could do that by selecting the column and going to Format, Hide and Unhide, Hide Column. That's a bit of a process. I'm going to hit Ctrl-Z to undo. There's a specific keyboard shortcut that you can use. You can use the keyboard shortcut of Ctrl-O. So pressing the Control key and the O key would automatically hide that column. Now, if you want to unhide the column, you would press Ctrl-Shift-O. So Ctrl-O to hide that column, Ctrl-Shift-O to unhide. If you want to hide specific rows, so let's say we wanted to hide these rows here all the way to operating income, we'd select those rows and then we press Ctrl-9 or Ctrl-Shift-9 to unhide. Ctrl-9, Ctrl-Shift-9. Ctrl-9. We know those rows are hidden because it goes from row 7 to row 8 and then row 16. So we're essentially missing rows 9 to 15. So Ctrl-Shift-9 is a pretty cool keyboard shortcut. And depending on how often you would hide or unhide either columns or rows, learning these individual keyboard shortcuts can be quite useful. All right, so what about grouping? Now, grouping is something that I use quite often. Let's say that we wanted to group this column here. We would press the Alt key, the Shift key, and then the right arrow. You'll notice that there's the outline here up above column F, and then we can essentially minimize that, which is kind of cool. Or say that we were to undo that. We could, again, insert a column here. So Control-Shift equals. We could make this a total column. 4 quarter clearly. We're going to use AutoSum by pressing Alt equals. We'll bring that down. Let's say that we wanted to hide these individual quarters. We could do that by pressing Alt Shift right arrow, grouping them, and then minimizing them. So that would be the total for the year, meaning that Apple in that specific total made $233 billion in sales, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. That's a lot of money. Anyway, so we've looked at grouping, again, with Control-Shift right arrow. If we want to ungroup something, you would select that and you would Control-Shift left arrow. Now we could also group something, say, like rows. So we would select those rows that we want to group. We would press Control-Shift right arrow. You'll notice here on the left-hand side, these outline symbols come. We could then minimize them. We have revenue and gross profit. We could then do something like maximizing them and then ungrouping them. We would again be Control-Shift left arrow. So grouping and ungrouping, whether you're using columns or rows, is the same. To group, you would make your selection and then Control-Shift right arrow, or I guess Alt-Shift right arrow. Maybe I've been saying that wrong. Alt-Shift right arrow to group, Alt-Shift left arrow to ungroup. Now, if you wanted to group something, you would by default have these outline symbols here show, and maybe you don't want those outline symbols to show. If that is the case, you would go ahead and use the keyboard shortcut Control-8. Pressing the Control key and the 8 key would either show or hide those outline symbols. I generally will show them, but it can be pretty useful if you're giving a presentation or something and you don't want them visible. So again, let's select these rows here, or select the cells in those rows and press Control or Alt Shift left arrow, and then we would ungroup those rows. So right, in this keyboard shortcut series, we looked at the idea of Control Shift equals to go ahead and display the insert dialog box. If we wanted to insert a row or column, we would select that row, Control Shift equals. If we wanted to do the same with a column, we select column, Control Shift equals. If we wanted to delete a column, or let's just say bring up the delete dialog box, we would do Control minus. If we wanted to delete a row, we could select that row, Control minus. Same with a column or group of columns, we would select those and then press Control minus. If we wanted to go ahead and delete specific cells, we could select those cells and then do Control minus. Or we can just press the delete key. I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. When we looked at hiding columns, we could do this with the keyboard shortcut of Control O. If we want to bring those back up and make them visible, we press Control Shift O. If we want to hide specific columns, we could select cells or individual items in those rows, and then we would press Control, I believe it's Control 9 or Control Shift 9 to unhide. We then looked at using the idea of grouping. So to bring up the group dialog box, we do Alt Shift right arrow, and then you can pick either columns or rows. So let's select these 4 columns, group them, Alt Shift right arrow. Those are grouped, and then Alt Shift left arrow ungrouped. Let's group, say, this set of rows, Control Shift right arrow to group, Control Shift left arrow to ungroup. Let's say that they're grouped. We don't want to display the outline symbols. We press Control 8. Control 8 would either show or hide the display of those outline symbols. All right, so there you have it, 17 keyboard shortcuts for how to more efficiently modify columns and rows within Microsoft Excel 2013. If you have any ideas, any suggestions, any complaints, any praise that you want to offer, go ahead and consider posting those in the comment section of this video. So with that, in our next section, or I guess in our next video, we will go ahead and discuss a series of tips, tricks, and keyboard shortcuts for navigating within Microsoft Excel. We'll look at things like moving one screen to the right, one screen to left, moving one page width down or up. We'll then look at moving to the different edges of your data region, things like the right, left, top, and bottom edge, as well as turning on end mode. So join us for any of these individual keyboard shortcuts in our next video, and we will see you again soon. As always, thanks for watching.